Mamdani wins mayoral contest in NYC and Trump Tower files for Canadian citizenship. Shutdown unleashes hell at U.S. airports. TSA's new motto, if you can smile, then you're just not in a long enough line. Jamie Dimon says deregulation will provide economic improvement. Yeah, sure. What could go wrong? That and a lot more on today's episode of Teed Off. Hey folks, it's James, your Clubhouse ambassador, coming to you from the Back Nine Live studios with all the raging news of the week, at least according to me. And we had a bunch this week. Boy, did we. Man, and a lot of people are worked up. Ooh, it's a big old news cycle going on. There's government shutdown still. There was elections where the Democrats decided that they just start stealing everything, which they stole stuff that they already had. I mean, New York mayor, New Jersey governors. I mean, you're talking about states that are blue. So the shutdown seems to be starting to hit some people. I have not noticed, but that's because I do not make my living based off of what the government does. Jamie Dimon talks about deregulating banks again for the betterment of all the small people. He didn't say small people, but he's meaning us little people. And Billy Bob Thornton says Hollywood prejudice towards Southerners. Those are the four I'm going to get into. So let's get into it right now. The Mamdani wins New York mayor. New York is now going so far left that Lady Liberty is actually leaning on her elbow now. He wants to take everything from the rich people. He's going to run all the rich people just out of town, and that's exactly what he's going to probably end up doing. I mean, at least they'll go to Florida for 6 months out of the year. He's turned the landlord population there into low single digits. I can't imagine if being a landlord in one of these liberal cities. My brother, he actually lives in San Francisco. His wife works for the State Department, and they're a part of the shutdown, so they're being affected. He lives in San Francisco, pays $6,000 a month rent. He's only been there for like 2 months now. $6,000 a month rent. Is that not amazing? But anyway, the government gave him, I guess, now IOUs that he can give to his landlord. I'm sure his landlord would love that. Could you imagine if I was a landlord coming up, or if you were a landlord coming up there and you said, hey, okay, rent's due, $6,000, need it in my pocket. And he said, oh, well, here you go. Uncle Sam has an IOU for you. Well, what am I supposed to do with this? The bank isn't going to take this. But then again, those liberal banks out in California, they may take them. But these landlords, it's been just probably a little more than a year since people have come out of forbearance where they didn't even have to pay rent at all. And now, all of a sudden, they're getting IOUs from government employees saying, oh, yeah, we'll get you your rent money. At some point here, we're going to just say, hey, U.S., I don't think your credit's good enough anymore. But Mamdani, he did win. We had Spanberger win, the governor in New Jersey, which Obama was touting for. Man, those way left ones are just like the way right ones. They're just nuts. And that Mamdani is one of those. This guy just thinks he's going to do everything in the world. I guess he's going to tax the poor people in New York to pay for it. Shutdown unleashes airport hell across the U.S. The only thing flying today is profanity. People are just going to start to get bad. But you got to realize, we every holiday season, we have 10% shutdowns, which is all this is. It starts at like 4% of the flights at 40 different airports, and it's supposed to progressively go up to 10% next week. And we also do have air traffic controllers that are missing paychecks. But what you got to realize is that this is just fear-mongering at its best, which is all these news articles are. They're just fear-mongering. We're still perfectly fine. I see all the people talking about like the SNAP benefits and the airports now and stuff like that, and just being like, oh my God, some terrible things are going to happen. I was talking to my mother, and I bring up my mother a lot here because me and my mother do not see eye to eye on a lot of things as far as politics go, because she is very much against Trump and very much liberal-minded. And I'm pretty much neither one. I'm just like, hey, I just came over to have a cup of coffee with my father and you and, discuss how your cats are doing. And my vote's always up for grabs. If politicians listening to this, I mean, You can buy my vote. It's not a problem. Brought up my mother to say this, Mom, I was wrong. The funding for SNAP is a part of the mandatory spending of the U.S. government. Okay? Court today said that Trump has to release the funding for the SNAP program, the full funding. And Trump's administration automatically said, well, we'll file an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will probably take this on tomorrow. Now, overall, the law is that the funding part of SNAP is a part of the mandatory spending. Mandatory spending in our budget means that Congress doesn't vote on this every year. They don't vote on any of this. The government shutdown comes because there are 12 appropriations bills in the discretionary budget each year. If they do not approve it, then the government has to shut down. Or they can do a continuing resolution, which we've always done, but now all of a sudden it seems to be nobody wants to do a continuing resolution. I don't know. I mean, it seems like we've always done them. Most people really don't understand this. So the mandatory spending part of our budget, meaning that Congress does not vote on it, the president doesn't vote on it. Every year these things just move forward. The whole reason they are mandatory spending is because they feel that they're the most important. They, meaning lawmakers, feel that it is the most important that a government shutdown not affect these things. And that would include Social Security. So don't worry, your Social Security is not going anywhere unless Congress changes the law. And they're not going to agree on anything at this point. Social Security will continue to come right up until Social Security goes broke. And then it won't come. And then you can blame politicians since Franklin Delano Roosevelt for it. So Social Security is part of it. Medicare is a part of it. Medicaid, the debt payment, those are mandatory spending. Yeah, defense is not in there, which is, to me, all that the government is really needed for is national defense. Medicare and Medicaid also include other health programs, and health programs like SNAP, the food welfare program, that's part of it. So the funding is a part. It's mandatory that the funding be there. Now, keep that in mind. The 12 appropriations, and Congress has to agree on all these, or else if they just disagree on one, then they can't do anything without a continuing resolution, which, like I said, nobody wants to do it, even though they've always done it. So the 12 appropriations, which are the discretionary part of the budget, are agriculture, rural development, and the FDA. The USDA is a part of this. So the USDA cannot be funded without those appropriations being approved. Now the problem becomes the USDA administers the SNAP program. So while the funding is there and can be released, there is nobody to administrate it. There's nobody to send out the checks because these people are sitting at home. They're not working. But that's what the USDA does. Now you have the judicial side in it talking about, well, the funding needs to be released. Well, the funding can be released, but how do you cut anybody a check? That's just the stupidity of the mandatory spending and the administrative part of it all. But that appropriation's there, commerce is there, the defense part of it's there, NASA is part of commerce, the FBI, energy, financial and general government, homeland security, interior, labor and health education, the VA, and Department of State, which is all foreign affairs, and transportation. Those are the appropriations. Those are the 12 that are a part of it. Should not be being, nobody should be working in those right now. And I think that, the general government, that's Congress's paychecks. So, another one that's mandatory in the spending is military pensions. There you go. That's the way the government's budget processes work. All right. Now I hear so much disinformation from all sides. And as I said, I'm sorry, Mom. I am very, very sorry. I thought SNAP was a part of the discretionary side of it. They're not. The USDA is. SNAP, the funding for it, the $4 billion, I believe it is there. Trump's just going to say, hey, the USDA isn't working anyway, so I can't do it. And he won't do it. And on and on and on. This circle of the circus of the United States of America just keeps going. How does this not blow everybody's mind, in my opinion? Blows my mind. So we've spent long enough on that one. That's too much for me. We're going to Jamie Dimon. He wants the deregulation. He says that everyday average Americans, if there's deregulation, which he was talking generalized deregulation, but he's really not. He's talking about deregulating the banks. He wants the banks to have to hold less reserves, meaning less deposits, less actual cash on their balance sheet, and be able to just lend out more. What can go wrong? Haven't we done this before? Yeah, we did this before, didn't we? How many millions of people lost their homes? How many billions of people lost their life savings? This was 2008. Banks were like, hey, let us police ourselves, Oh, okay, yeah. Sure, you guys did such a bang-up job last time. Which, to tell you the truth, I make fun, but Jamie Dimon is right. The financial system is based on lending. And if lending freezes up, if the banks cannot lend money, or I'm going to put it this way. If the banks can't lend money, then every payroll in this country will freeze up. If you work for a company, a big company, or most small companies, they borrow money basically overnight to be able to make payroll. Because most companies do not run with large amounts of cash reserves. They borrow to grow. That's the problem in itself. And so if credit freezes up, we're in trouble real fast. Planes stop flying immediately. Insurance companies, they're gone. So there's no insurance on anything. So you can't fly a plane without insurance. You can't perform a surgery without insurance. As much as we hate it, they really are too big to fail. JP Morgan is too big to fail. Goldman Sachs is too big to fail. Bank of America is too big to fail. Wells Fargo is too big to fail. They can do everything wrong. Everything. And we still have to bail them out whenever things go bad. And they know it. That just comes with being a economy that is reliant on debt. There's 3 ways to fix it. I mean, I'm sure that everybody listening probably has some idea of how to fix it. And if you got one and I haven't heard it, leave it in the comments. There are only 3 ways to fix these sort of things. One is, and I'm talking about the major spender, which is the government, which has the most debt. But it also goes for every single person that has debt. If you have household debt, this is the only way that you can really get out of debt. One is austerity. Austerity means you tighten your belt, cut your expenses, you cut your costs, and you start to really save money and pay down debt. We're not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. That would be political suicide for everybody in Washington, D.C. It's not going to happen. Second, default. We're not going to do that because we never have to. Because we can print US dollars. So there is no need to ever default. You just print more money, which leads us into the third way to get out of a debt problem. And that's inflation. Take a wild guess which one of those 3 we are going to do. That's right. We're going to let inflation run very hot for a very long time. We have $34 trillion worth of debt. If prices go up on your goods, that means you're paying more taxes on those goods. So you inflate the burden of that debt away. You still have the same amount there that you have to pay back, but it becomes less of a burden because you start to take in more. They're going to take and try to get this debt paid down, not paid down. Less of a burden by inflation. And we're all going to feel it and we're all going to hate it. That's what you're seeing now with the stock market. Asset prices catch inflation before real goods do. It usually takes about a year for real goods and services, inflation, to catch up to where the market's already inflated. And that's the thing, is we're sitting in a market where everything has gone up. And this has never happened before in the history of markets, where gold, treasuries, stocks, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, meme coins, they all go up. That is the inflation, but that is the money printing that is doing that. And that is creating a huge bubble, because what you have is all this debt. If you don't get that inflation starting to run hot really quick, then all that debt starts to become due, and then you have to shake all that debt out of the system. And the way you shake all that debt out of the system is you crash the markets, because they run so much on leverage, they run so much on margin, they run so much on borrowed money. So whenever those debts start to get defaulted on, which they will, the only ones that won't default on their debt are the government, because that inflation is going to go up, but the rates will go up with it, because rates will stay above inflation. Because why would I lend you money if inflation is 4%? Why would I lend you money at 3%? I lose money if I do that. I lose purchasing power every year by 1% if I do that. I will demand that rates stay higher for you, not for the U.S. government. The U.S. government's something totally different. Them and the Federal Reserve are going to work out a deal. Yield curve control. They'll control the curve, which is the difference in spreads between yields on bonds and bills. You know what? I'm not even going to get into this stuff. I'd lose people doing this, and I would have to really have it kind of in front of me because it gets so complicated, but it is actually so simple. Anyway, let's move on to the last one. We're already running late on all this. These first ones have been wacky to me. Wacky. Mamdani. I can't believe the New York guys. I mean, but I guess the alternative was Cuomo, and well, he was already trying to kill old people in nursing homes, wasn't he, out there? Billy Bob Thornton says, Hollywood prejudice towards Southerners. Well, yeah, Billy. Come on. I lived out there for 10 years. I was from the South, too. They're prejudiced against everybody. They think that the South starts at Disneyland. If you lived on east part of the 110 freeway, you were East Coast. You lived over that little mountain and had an 818 area code, they wouldn't give you any parts. I actually heard that whenever I got out there. It's like you have to have a 323 or a 310 area code or you won't be able to get any parts. That was what my first manager told me. They love the British people. They as long as you have a British accent and you can get rid of it, they're like, now I could get rid of a Southern accent and I was talented enough to do that, and I had voice lessons and it wasn't a problem, and I could definitely do a Southern accent. But oh no, they didn't like me. They didn't like me one bit whenever I went into auditions like that. But then again, like I said, they were prejudiced towards anybody. And it's so funny. They were all prejudiced towards everybody, but nobody was from Hollywood. Everybody came from somewhere else. So it isn't just a Southern thing. But like I said, you live past Dodger Stadium, and they're like, man, you go back to Oklahoma or whatever. Now, Billy honestly said, he said, whenever it gets to a point that you're a high enough paid actor or whatever, that it doesn't matter. Amongst the low level, yeah, they love Southern stories, they love Westerns, but they just don't like Southerners telling them. Except for Taylor Sheridan. Because like I said, he's still killing it. The guy's killing it. They love that Southerner because that Southerner makes them a ton of money. All right. Leave a comment. Let's, I'll come up with a good pinned comment. Let's start doing that. I'm going to leave pinned comments that actually ask a question that is really relevant. It's my fault. It's my fault that we haven't been engaging as much because I'm not asking hard enough questions. I'm not asking questions that really get under your skin that you want to answer. So I'm going to come up with a good pinned comment for this one. Now, the liking part, you got to do that. That thumbs up, pop, pop, pop. It'll do that. Subscribe. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And then if you really are really wanting to know all about Teed Off, there'll be a little bell after that, and then hit that bell and it'll go, and then whenever I do anything, it's going to send it right to your phone, and you'll be like, wow, Jim just got another piece of content out for me. Let's go watch it. Yay! All right, we're done.